The Story King presents When the Alpha Falls. Welcome to the Story King, where every tale claims your heart. Don't forget to subscribe and join our pack. The boardroom went silent when she walked in. Not because of her expensive suit or the portfolio clutched against her chest, but because she met Alpha Dominic Ashford's legendary glare and smiled like she'd just seen a puppy. "Good boy," she said, patting his shoulder as she passed his chair. "Love the aggressive energy, very on brand." Every wolf in the room stopped breathing. Dominic's second in command, Marcus, actually choked on his coffee. The three visiting alphas from the Northern Territories looked like they'd witnessed a death sentence being issued. Even the Omega secretary by the door had gone pale, her fingers frozen over her tablet. Because nobody touched Alpha Ashford without permission. And absolutely no one called the most feared alpha in the Eastern Seaboard a good boy, and lived to tell about it. Dominic's eyes flashed gold, his wolf surging so close to the surface that the temperature in the room seemed to drop. His fingers dug into the mahogany table, leaving claw marks in the wood. "Out!" His voice was barely human, a growl that vibrated through every chest in the room. "Everyone, now!" The exodus was immediate and chaotic. Chairs scraped, papers scattered, and within 15 seconds, the massive boardroom was empty except for two people, the most dangerous alpha on the East Coast, and the small human woman who was still setting up her laptop like nothing had happened. The door clicked shut. "You are mine," Dominic roared, the sound shaking the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia Chen looked up from her screen, one eyebrow raised. "I'm your new PR consultant. If that's what you mean by yours, then yes, I suppose I am. For the next 6 months, anyway." 6 hours earlier, Olivia had not wanted this job. A werewolf alpha with an image problem. She'd said to her boss at Crawford and Associates, "Linda, I do crisis management for Fortune 500 companies, not whatever this is." Linda had slid the contract across the desk. The number at the bottom had made Olivia's eyes water. "Ashford Enterprises is worth billions. Their alpha is brilliant, ruthless, and currently scaring away every potential business partner on the Eastern Seaboard. 3 PR firms have quit in as many months. He needs someone who won't roll over just because he growls." "I'm human," Olivia had pointed out. "Doesn't he need someone who understands pack dynamics? He needs someone who'll tell him the truth. You're the only consultant we have who's ever made a grown man cry during a feedback session. That was one time, and he was embezzling from cancer patients." "Still counts," Linda had grinned. "Besides, you grew up in wolf territory. Your parents ran that diner in Silverpine for 30 years. You're not afraid of them." That was true. Olivia had served pancakes to more alphas, betas, and omegas than most humans would meet in a lifetime. She'd learned early that werewolves were just people with better senses and worse tempers. Treat them with respect but not fear, and most of them were perfectly reasonable. Of course, she'd never met Dominic Ashford. Now, standing alone with him, the alpha circled her slowly, his movements liquid and predatory. He'd removed his suit jacket, and she could see the way his muscles coiled beneath his white dress shirt. His eyes hadn't returned to their normal gray, they remained that eerie, luminous gold. "You don't smell afraid," he said, stopping behind her chair. Close, too close. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Why don't you smell afraid?" Olivia saved her presentation and closed her laptop with a decisive click. Then she turned to face him, having to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Because I'm not," she said simply. "You hired me to fix your reputation problem. That means I need to be honest with you, even when the truth isn't pretty. I can't do that if I'm terrified of you. Everyone is terrified of me." "Yes, I've noticed. That's why you're here." She pulled out a folder and opened it. "In the past year, you've lost contracts with 3 major tech firms, 2 pharmaceutical companies, and a streaming service that was going to produce a documentary about progressive supernatural communities. Do you know why?" His jaw tightened. Because they're cowards who don't understand strength. Because you threw a chair at a CEO during a negotiation. He insulted my pack. He suggested a revised timeline for a merger. Olivia flipped to another page. You also made a venture capitalist cry, threatened to rip out the throat of a journalist who asked about your personal life, and, my personal favorite, you apparently picked up a BMW and moved it 6 parking spaces because someone took your spot. It was my spot. It was a public parking garage, Mr. Ashford. But despite herself, Olivia felt her lips twitch. There was something almost endearing about his indignation. The gold in his eyes flickered. Did you just? Are you laughing at me? Absolutely not, she said, fighting to keep her expression neutral. I'm simply noting that your approach to conflict resolution needs work. He moved suddenly, planting his hands on either side of her chair, caging her in. His face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of amber in his eyes, smell the crisp scent of pine and winter air that clung to him. Give me one good reason, he said softly, dangerously, why I shouldn't fire you right now. Olivia's heart was racing. She wasn't stupid. She knew she was in the presence of her apex predator, but she held his gaze steadily. Because I'm the first person in months who's treated you like a person instead of a monster, she said quietly. And because somewhere under all this alpha posturing, you actually care about your pack. Your reputation isn't just hurting you, it's hurting them. The Omega wolves in your territory who need jobs. The young wolves who need internships. They're all being passed over because companies don't want to associate with the dangerous Ashford pack. Something shifted in his expression. The gold receded slightly from his eyes. You researched my pack, he said. Not a question. I research everything. She held up the folder. I know you personally fund a scholarship program for Omega students. I know you've opened Packlands as a wildlife sanctuary. I know you anonymously paid the medical bills for a rival Alpha's daughter when she had cancer. You're not the monster everyone thinks you are, Dominic. But you need to stop acting like one. He was quiet for a long moment, still caging her in, still close enough that she could count his heartbeats. You called me Dominic, he said finally. Would you prefer Mr. Ashford? No. His voice had gone rough. No, no one calls me by my name. Not like that. Like what? Like I'm just a person. Olivia felt something crack open in her chest. There, in his eyes, she saw past the alpha, past the billionaire, past the reputation. She saw someone who was bone-tired of being feared. Someone who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched without flinching. You are a person, she said softly. A person who happens to be able to turn into a wolf and throw chairs when you're angry, but still a person. He laughed, the sound startled and genuine. Is that your professional assessment? That's my personal observation. My professional assessment is going to take about 6 months and involve a lot of media training, charity galas, and you learning to count to 10 before threatening people. I don't threaten people. You threatened me 7 times in our email correspondence before we met. That was just setting expectations. That was you trying to scare me into quitting before I started. She smiled. Didn't work. Dominic straightened, running a hand through his dark hair. It was the first uncertain gesture she'd seen from him. Why? He asked. Why take this job? The money. The money doesn't hurt, she admitted. But mostly, I'm curious. About werewolves. About you. She stood, gathering her materials. Everyone says you're a monster. But monsters don't fund scholarships. They don't protect wildlife. They don't, she hesitated, then continued, they don't look at someone like they're starving for kindness. His breath caught. For a moment, the mask slipped completely, and she saw raw vulnerability in his face. Don't, he said hoarsely. Don't be kind to me. I don't know what to do with that. Olivia's heart twisted. She took a risk, stepping closer, reaching out to straighten his collar where it had gone crooked. He froze under her touch. Good boy, she said again, gentler this time. We'll figure it out together. The gold flooded back into his eyes, but this time it wasn't anger. It was something else, something that made her pulse skip. "You're playing with fire, Olivia Chen," he warned. "I'm really not. I'm just treating you like a person who deserves basic decency." She picked up her bag. "Same time tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do." He caught her wrist as she moved past him, his touch careful despite his obvious strength. "When I said you were mine," he said quietly, "I didn't mean as an employee." "I know," she said, meeting his eyes. "But that's all I can be right now. Maybe if you let me help you. If you learn to let people in. Maybe then we can talk about what else I might be." "That sounds like a challenge." "That's because it is one." She smiled. "Think you can handle it, Alpha?" He released her wrist, something like respect dawning in his expression. "I'm going to prove you wrong about me." "I hope you do," she said. "But Dominic, I'm not wrong about you. I think you've just been wrong about yourself." She left him standing in the empty boardroom, and as the door closed behind her, she heard something that made her smile. The Alpha was laughing, real, genuine laughter that sounded like it had been locked away for far too long. 6 months, she thought. She had 6 months to show the most feared Alpha on the East Coast that he could be powerful and kind. That strength didn't require cruelty. She had a feeling it was going to be the most interesting 6 months of her life. Behind her, through the closed door, she heard him say to himself, "Good boy." She called me a good boy. He sounded wonderfully, dangerously pleased. Thank you for reading. If you loved this story, subscribe to the Story King for more tales of love, danger, and the monsters who learn to be more. Your next favorite story is just one click away.